high on life and drunk on power. This is the New World Order broadcast, coming to you live from the end of the world.
You are watching the New World Order broadcast, and we are coming to you live from the end of the world. I am your host, the Hatman. This is your other host, Talking Head number 6, who, he's high. I've been up for 26 hours, and I can't handle marijuana anyway.
Yeah, without that being the case, yeah.
And, you're so much better at that shit than I am.
I'll tell you, I've had some bad experiences with it. I've learned to take little hits because you often don't know what people are putting in front of you if you're in a communal situation.
Well, I mean, like, Joe Rogan has this bit in one of his stand-up specials. I think it's one of the ones on Netflix. He goes, drugs became legal, and he's a big proponent of medical marijuana.
Sure.
And he talks about going to a dispensary where they have edibles.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Okay, so the bit is I'm gonna completely butcher it, but he's talking of he goes to buy some gummy bears, and the guy's like, "How many you want?" He goes, "Why? How many should I take?"
Oh God!
And the guy leans over the counter and goes, "Just the leg." And he goes, "Just the leg, motherfucker! Why are you selling whole bears?"
Yeah, right.
So my experience with drugs has been very different than yours. I wasn't a huge druggie when I was a kid, but I loved marijuana, just like any teenager does. It wasn't readily available to me. I didn't have a lot of money, and the older kids that were selling it kind of insisted on that, and they ripped you off.
Well, of course, because they're skimming off of it. Because I think a common term back then was to take a pinch, quote unquote.
Well, that pinch turned my 20 bag into like a 10 bag. I spent $20 on way too little weed.
You know what's?
I think for $20 nowadays you could get more than what I got back then.
So the funny thing is, we're showing our age at this point, because back when we were young, back in our youths, it was a situation where everything was by the money. So it was nickel bag, dime bag, nickel bag's $5, dime bag's $10.
Yeah, it's not that anymore?
Oh, so it's gone through multiple iterations.
Oh, shit.
So then after us, it became by ounces. And so it would be a situation where you'd sit there and
you went to your dealer and you asked for it in ounces?
Not in ounces, but like eighth of an ounce, stuff like that. Like, oh, I got an eighth. That would be the way that you'd
Why don't you just say how much money you have?
Because that was the thing, is that the prices kept going up, so you couldn't really tell how much you were getting.
So they turned it into like a tokens at an arcade situation? Where they made it more abstract, so you didn't really realize what you were spending?
No, it was actually less abstract, because you would sit there and ask for the amount of weed you want instead of the amount of money you would spend.
All right, good point.
Because
I was thinking about that incorrectly.
Yeah,
You're right.
So you would sit there and you would get like incredibly different amounts of marijuana for the same amount of money. And so they moved on to sitting there
to the actual weight. Okay.
Yeah, so you would order by the weight of your bag. I want a quarter of an ounce, an eighth of an ounce, whatever that was. They've moved on past that. For some reason, drug dealing is the only thing in America that now goes by the metric system. I shit you not. You order it in grams now.
Those commie bastards.
I know. It's so sad. But yeah, it's very funny, like, when you think about, like, drugs being...
Oh, yeah. Well, isn't that the label that they have on edibles? Like, there's all these jokes. I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan, if anybody doesn't know. Don't they have all these jokes about Joey Diaz? And, like, it tells you how many grams of THC are in the edible, and he keeps hiding the other 0 so that people... Hey, take this edible.
Oh, God.
And it's like, 20 grams? Yeah, I can handle that on a flight, but it's actually 200 grams. And there was something weird about that label. Let me look at the package. And... fuck, Joey, what did you do to me? And he just looks at you and goes, ha ha ha, welcome to hell, motherfucker.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories like that.
No, I gotcha. But yeah, so they sit there and they do a lot of that stuff, and I'm pretty sure it's probably not grams.
Milligrams.
THC, it's
Sorry,
milligrams.
yeah.
But again, they're on the metric system.
Okay,
so yeah,
I gotcha.
But
interesting.
Yeah. So it's actually like the most forward thinking section of humanity is drug users.
Who would have known?
I know it's interesting.
I would love to count myself among them. And before we started this episode, you took a big ass hit.
I wouldn't call it big ass, but it was a hit.
Looked big ass to me. Listen, so when I was a teenager and I was doing this, I had so many wonderful experiences. So my friend growing up in the suburbs was Ukrainian.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Alex.
Well, yeah.
We call him by fucking name.
Sure.
I'm not going to dox him saying his last name, but his name was Alex, and he had a very Ukrainian last name. And, I went over his house a few times, but he always came out to our houses, my group of friends, like my house or Dan's house, or we didn't really go to Tom's house either, but yeah, Dan's house was a big one. We never went to his house. There wasn't a lot to do. He didn't have a lot of money, and his mom didn't speak any English.
Oh my God, she was a trip.
She was a trip. She didn't speak any English, always had like a baboopshka and a muumuu on. Like she looked very Eastern European. And
she looked like the most, like if you were to film a Marvel movie that took place in the Ukraine, she would be the woman who comes out of her door hitting Iron Man with a fucking like rolling pin,
right?
Because he broke her window, or
right?
Yeah,
yeah. She's a caricature. Yeah. So I could never understand a word she said. One day, me and Alex were underneath the bridge. You know where the bridge was?
Under the bridge downtown.
I was thinking of the Nirvana song. But,
oh yeah, well that was much more depressing, but yeah.
I was depressed. And but not for long.
Hey!
We went under the bridge and we shared a joint. A whole joint. We're talking like cigarette length full of marijuana.
Yeah, probably like easy wider, double wide, yeah.
And we shared one. We finished the motherfucker. And we were beautifully high. This is what I would call like the sunshine state of being. And we walked from the bridge along the lake to his house. And I walked in and his mother asked me if I wanted something to eat. Now, here's the weird thing.
Oh, yeah, I remember this story.
I understood what she said. And I said, well, what do you have? And she was amazed. Like her eyes bugged out of her head. Because nobody could understand what the fuck she was saying.
And for context, she understood English. She just couldn't speak it.
Could not speak it for shit.
So he did not...
most of the words were not English.
Yeah, and he didn't respond in Ukrainian, which would be a different kind of
I understood
incredible.
what she was saying.
Oh, yeah, no, I gotcha.
And before that, I could understand 0% of what she was saying. It was like at the point, because I was a really polite kid. So she'd talk to me, I'd just smile and nod. Smile and nod. I didn't even have the guts at that point, like 14 years old, to look her in the eye and say, hey man, I can't understand what the fuck you're saying.
I don't know why you talk to me. I don't understand.
Yeah. So she asked me if I wanted something to eat, and I said, well, what do you got? I don't know. I don't know why.
Yeah, I was just fucking floored her.
I was in a different world, and I could understand what she was saying. Eventually, me and her were so wrapped up in a conversation about religion and politics and what I'm going to do when I get older, what I want to be when I grow up. And Alex gets so bored, he goes into the basement to play video games. I'm talking to his mom, who doesn't speak English, for hours.
And the funny thing is that he was so high that it wasn't registering him to him that something weird was going on.
That something
there, yeah.
supernatural was happening here.
Yeah, because he was also high, yeah.
I am communicating with somebody who speaks a different language that I don't know, and somehow it's registering in my consciousness exactly what she's saying.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I mean, that's pretty incredible. And you just fucked something up. What'd you fuck up, hi man?
I didn't fuck anything up.
I saw you look at the computer.
A secondary window popped up, so I just wanted to close it real quick before it got in the way.
All right. I'm keeping an eye on you because you're high.
I can actually, I can function. So here's the funny thing.
I always envied you this. Go ahead.
I prefer drinking for one reason and one reason alone.
Always wondered about that because I don't react well to modern marijuana. That's why I drink. But go ahead. Why do you prefer drinking the marijuana? Because you act on it really well.
So it's the inversion of the way it takes effect. So I like to wind down. That's why I sit there and I drink or smoke or whatever.
Well, why don't you get like the sativa?
So it's the fact that it starts at its peak and then comes down, whereas alcohol is a slow buildup.
Before a crash.
Sure, but that's what I'm looking to do is go to sleep at the end of the night. And so the thing that always throws me off about marijuana is the fact that the highest you're going to be
Is right in the beginning.
right after you smoke it.
Okay, I got you.
And so that's the only reason why I've always preferred alcohol is because I like the slow descent into sleep. Whereas with marijuana, it turns into a situation where it's like up and then slow descent, you know?
All right. I don't know, man. When I was a kid, I had these magical experiences on marijuana and some other drugs. I never did a hardcore hallucinogens. I'm just not made for it. Reality for me, what other people call reality, which I define as consensus reality, is already so tenuous that I feel like if I were to chemically induce
An altered state. Yeah.
an altered state, I don't know if I'd be able to handle it.
And that's actually a conversation that we've had. So this is actually a fun thing to go into. Is that
That's where we came up with the idea for this podcast.
Yeah. So I have done hallucinogens, very high potency blotter acid, mushrooms, mescaline, and
You did mescaline?
Yeah, I did mescaline.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I took a gel tab. But the funny thing is I've always been curious as to what you would be like on them, but too fearful of what you might be like on them to genuinely recommend you trying them.
Well, let's start with this. I'll explain it. My fear of them is probably the same as your fear of me on them. Did you notice that we have a new prop in the middle of the table?
Oh, God. What is that?
Oh, that's Baby Me. I haven't given him a name yet.
Mini me.
So here's what happened. One morning, I woke up in the compound in my lazy chair, as I am wont to fall asleep in, because for some reason I despise beds. It feels like I'm laying myself down to death. I like chairs and couches.
Yeah, I think I would describe it more because I experienced this as well, actually, is that you don't want to plan to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want it to just happen.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to sleep this time. I was in my lazy chair, and I was meditating, and I started to dip into that realm between sleep and wakefulness, where if you believe... I don't care if you believe in it. It's accurate. It's true. If you believe in psychic powers, you start to receive visions. And if you don't believe in it, you'll call them dreams. I don't think there's a difference, personally. And I started to nod and be like, oh, saw that. Oh, saw that. And I was like, okay, we're going to recline. So I just reclined. And I put myself into a trance state. And I dipped out of consciousness for a few moments. Now, then I woke up, and I opened my eyes, and I'm sitting up perfectly straight in a large gray room. In the middle of the floor in front of me, about 20 feet ahead.
Is it backwards talking midget?
Creepier. There's a mannequin head that hairdressers use to train on that looks exactly like one that my ex-girlfriend gave me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I liked collecting creepy things. So it was, you remember the 3 I used to have?
Yeah.
It was one of those, but it was alive. It made
that's fun.
It made eye contact with me, and I'm just kind of in limbo staring at this thing. And then I woke up, and waking up is realizing what you're looking at. I became conscious. I said, oh, well, that's not consensus reality. Oh, I'm out of my body. And then it looked at me and it smiled and it nodded. Just a decapitated plastic head on a floor. I tried to get out of my body and move toward it. For some reason, I couldn't. And immediately, as soon as I started to try to move out of my body, snapped back in, and I was seeing the ceiling because I was in the recliner.
Sure, yeah.
And so that is the type of experience that has become extremely potent as I get older, that I was experiencing in some sort of similar way when I was younger, which is the reason why I've always shied away from hardcore psychedelics.
No, yeah, and I can understand that.
It seems like the type of experience that I'm already always on a borderland for. My toe is always in that pond, and I can dive in when I want to. I'm afraid that I might drown if I use a chemical to get there.
Oh, sure. And that's actually really, because we've had this conversation before, obviously, but yeah, that's why for anyone really, I can't in good conscience sit there and be like, oh yeah, dude, you should totally try acid. It's gonna like blow your mind open.
All of my friends said the same thing to me when I was a teenager, because I talked to them about some of the things I experienced, and I said, well, do you think I should try? And they were like, nah, probably not.
Well, and the funny thing is that it's not you when it's coming from me. It's actually just the fact that to do anything like that, because I actually really get heavily affected by psychedelics. Mm. So it's one of those things where it's like, if I'm sitting there and I'm dropping acid with a couple of my friends or something like that, what'll end up happening is they'll just be like, oh yeah, this is cool, it's fun, oh, it's nice. And I'll sit there and be like...
So you really have to white knuckle it through?
Yeah.
And why do you do it?
Because once you get past once you get past the peak, it is this incredible realigning of perspective that once you get past the terror.
Do you have to peak and go through the terror to get to that realigning of perspective, or could you like microdose? Have you ever tried that?
I mean, I haven't tried microdosing because, of course, these things are illegal. So it's one of those things where you never know how potent what you're getting is.
That's true.
And the funny thing is that you're very susceptible to suggestion in those states.
Sure.
And so
that makes a lot of sense.
I had an experience one of the last times that I did acid where I was with 2 friends of mine, and we had gotten a total of 3 tabs each.
Okay.
Bought a total of 3 tabs each. And so what ends up happening is the one girl who was there was extremely well-versed in psychedelics. So it's like, for her, this was like eating potato chips.
Okay.
And so she's just like, oh, I'm going to take 2 to start. And of course, we follow suit. So it's like, all right, yeah, I'll take 2. And so we ordered Domino's pizza right when we dropped the acid. And so what ends up happening is I've been elected, of course, as the sole male in the group, that I am the one who is going to make the transfer of goods. And
the transfer. I'm sorry. That was a hilarious way to describe it.
So we ordered...
That sounded like female thinking and really high thinking, the transfer of goods.
Yeah, exactly.
The one with the nuts should do that. Make him do it.
He is the beefy one. They will not mess with the beefy one.
They will not mess with the beefy one. We're all far too high and small to do this.
So these decisions were made prior to dropping the acid. So it was, we made the order.
Oh, God.
Because we knew we were going to be
so you had
wrecked.
that to look forward to.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that'll put you in a bad trip immediately, I imagine. Like, looking forward to, I'm going to have to give money to somebody and then take something?
I thought it would be fine because it's like, oh, this is... For the most part, it was.
But it wasn't in your head, was it?
Oh, so here we go. So take you through it in stages. So make the order, drop the acid. So,
do you think anybody just heard me fart on camera?
I don't know. I heard it, but I just assumed that you were rocking in your chair, so I wasn't sure it was a fart.
Oh, that was definitely a fart. Good.
But so the one thing, like you've had time dilation while you're high, right? Like on weed, you know.
You mean where, like, you think more time has passed, but it hasn't, or you think no time has passed, but it has?
More time has, but it hasn't. So, like, it's been 5 minutes, but you think it's been 2 hours.
I think so.
Because I'm sure you've probably had it when you're doing
astral projection
and stuff like that.
For certain, 100%.
So you know what this feels like then. So the next 5 hours of my life, while I'm waiting for this pizza, became a situation where, due to the lighting in the room, it was like that scene in Willy Wonka where they're walking into that room that gets smaller as they go into it.
Oh my God.
And as I walked back, and all I kept doing was walking back and forth between the living room. So it's an open concept apartment. There's a kitchen that's a little bit sequestered, and then there's like a dining room and a living room, and we're mostly based in the living room. It's a little 1-bedroom apartment. And the entire 5 hours that it took for the pizza to get delivered, I'm sitting there and I'm just not pacing like with any kind of like nervousness or intent, just fascinatedly walking back and forth between the living room and the kitchen, and the living room and the kitchen, because it kept getting smaller when I walked toward the kitchen, and it was
terrifying.
Just fascinating. No, at this point, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Okay.
And but the funny thing is, in retrospect, I understand that it's the way the apartment was lit, the shadows cast differently as I moved, and that skewed my perspective.
Sure.
I was one of the girls who was with me, I was dating at the time. And I find my girlfriend in the kitchen.
Okay.
My girlfriend is opening and closing the freezer with her head in it. Because it's so cold in here. Oh, it feels so good. It's so cold.
That must look like a fucking horror film to you.
Yeah. It looked like she was repeatedly decapitating herself.
Jesus Christ.
I was still okay with it because this was not my first rodeo. So it's like, I know to expect all this. And this is why it's difficult to recommend this to anyone. Is because I knew all of this stuff was to expect this type of thing anyway. And so she's just sitting there, bonk. Oh, so cold. Now it's not cold. Now it's cold. Now it's not cold. And just doing that. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here pacing back and forth between looking at her and being like, oh, you're really fucked up, aren't you? I want to go get tall again. And so that was the first 5 hours.
This sounds like a fucking Silent Hill video game horror show right here.
So, but imagine it being like a cute version of Silent Hill. Like if Silent Hill was
You're not
like
taking it too
bear.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yet. I'm
sure,
assuming. Yeah.
The horror set in when the doorbell rang.
Oh, God. Now you have to give somebody money.
Worse than that. It's been 5 hours, you have to remember.
Sure. So you don't even remember why there's a doorbell ringing.
Oh, God, why is somebody ringing the doorbell? And, of course, by the same process of elimination that we decided that I was going to pay for it to begin with, it's been decided that I need to check who the intruder is ringing the doorbell.
God, Jesus Christ. Poor pizza delivery guy.
So I walk downstairs, and I'm sure, like, at this point, I must have had like no iris. Like it must have just been all fucking pupil.
Your eyes are basically just black demon eyes.
And so I just walked downstairs with these shark eyes, open the door, absolutely like the look on my face was probably something like, because I just don't know what's going to be there. Because who ordered a pizza?
Anything could be there.
Exactly. That could have been a sentient dog. That could have been a UFO. You know, I don't know.
Dogs are totally sentient.
But yeah, so bewildered looking young gentleman with a pizza, well, several pizzas in his hand, sits there and he's looking at me like, hey, how's it going? And like, the thing that calmed me down, I could instantly tell this dude was fucking stoned as shit.
Like mine's.
Yeah, so he's sitting there, his eyes are glass, my eyes are black voids, and we just meet eyes, we're like,
That's great.
That's when you know the universe is telling you everything's gonna be okay.
That's fucking great, man. That's great. Oh, I forgot to finish my story. The mannequin head, astral projection, then I came back to my body.
Oh yeah, you're going to have to interrupt me all the time from here on out.
Oh yeah, I know. So, no, I forgot to finish my story because I'm drunk.
Nah, I gotcha.
I went to the office, did some work, and by the time I got back to the bunker, Dennis was here with this little baby head.
Oh yeah, that
day
thing right there. Yeah,
that day, after I astral projected and saw a mannequin head nodding at me on the floor, I came home to a little baby head.
That's fucking terrifying, dude.
And I was like, did I just peer through time? What happened? Like, I just saw this like 6 hours ago on the astral plane, and now it's something like that is sitting here.
I have manifested a reality.
And he's like, we need to go back to the flea market where I got this because
the baby's missing it.
No, because the baby's missing it. Because there's 10 masks of human faces that you might want to buy. And I was like, okay.
I think this is more about who you are as a person than anything else.
But this happened to me. So my concept of reality and the reality I exist in.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Is so close to that psychedelic border. I'm like, I don't know what would happen if you
actually kicked the door in,
because
as it were, yeah.
What I do on the astral plane actually affects what we call physical reality in some way. They're connected in some weird way. And I'm like, if I start tripping balls and I start seeing a dragon shit on my house, the roof's going to cave in. I know that's going to...
I hear you, yeah.
It's just... It's very strange. So you and the pizza guy were just like, hey! And that was the end of it?
I mean, the night was like literally 37 hours long, so obviously that wasn't the end of it. That was just the first 5 hours.
It's 37 hours long.
Dude, anybody... I'm not advocating any kind of hallucinogens, but if you take acid...
He's totally advocating.
And you just want something that's going to capture your spirit...
Get a high pizza guy.
No, hang drum music. Look it up.
Okay. I'm going to have to look that up. I'll take your word for it for now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you want to play some?
I can play a couple of seconds if you want to talk for a second while I look it up, sure.
Yeah, we can cut, but okay. I could probably think of something to say.
We'll look it up. We'll be right back. Yeah, so this song... So, funny story. We had a playlist going that was all hang drum music because the third party, who was a friend of my then girlfriend, like I said, she was a pro. You know, it is just like somebody who's like she's the type of person who would like wake up, drop acid, and go to school. Like that kind of.
Yeah, we grew up with some of those people.
Yeah, they're like that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so she's just like, oh yeah, here, I've got a playlist for this. I was marveling at this girl's playlist.
Okay.
Because she had put together, like, hours of this insane hang drum music compilation.
Okay.
And it was all good, and it was all different. And then I realized I kept hearing children laughing, and that was really fucking creeping me out. And it was happening with like this frequency. It's like at this point we're talking like it's 11:30 p.m. midnight, and I'm like, why the fuck are kids giggling? Like, this is really fucking weird. Nice fart.
Thank you.
The kids are giggling outside at 11:30 p.m. on a school night. And I came to realize that it was like just 4 songs that she was just playing on constant loop, and one of them is a live performance where there's a child giggling in the background.
How long do you think it took you to realize that? Like in real time?
That was probably about like hour 20.
Speculative. Yeah, okay. No, I got you. There's no way to know.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way to know.
Every time I looked at the clock, I was like, how is that the only amount of time that has passed?
Yep.
Like, I sat there and there was a clock front and center on like the cable box that was like under the TV or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there and like every time I was like, oh man, it must be really fucking late. We should be quiet. Like we don't want to bother the neighbors, because it was like in a apartment complex, that like a 2-story one. So I just don't want to bother the people downstairs because we were on the 2nd floor.
Okay.
And we're moving around and being loud and everything.
Okay.
And I'd sit there and be like, oh, fuck, man, it's got to be like 3 a.m, because we sat there and dropped the acid at like 8. It's got to be 3 a.m, 8:25.
Oh, Jesus, it was that bad.
Oh, at the beginning? Yeah.
Ooh.
But yeah, so for...
Yikes.
For everybody's viewing entertainment here,
Well, before you show this,
Sure.
Hang on a second. I think that's interesting because... And I've talked to you about this before, so maybe having done psychedelics, maybe we can kind of draw some sort of parallel, because I would like to try it eventually. I'm getting older.
Yeah.
I would like to try it before I take my exit gracefully, which I plan not doing.
I would recommend not doing it on your deathbed. That's going to be
brutal. No. I mean, like when I take my exit, I'm going to kick and scream the whole way. I would like to try it. So when I'm in an astral projection, the way time seems to work is it kind of seems to work like computer time, where computers have to have an internal clock.
And the clock has to sync, yeah.
The clock has to sync with external time, because otherwise the way a computer would measure time is by the execution of commands.
Exactly, by processes.
There's no empty space. So that's kind of the same way I perceive time when I'm on the astral plane. Is it's by a series of commands. I'm measuring time subconsciously by the amount of events I'm creating or interacting with. Like if I meditate on a beach that I created out of my imagination, I said, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And I've done this. It is possible to not do anything, but I sit down and I meditate for 6 hours. Inevitably, there's a conversation that I'm having with an entity or within myself, and the amount of time that I use to measure that in memory, at least when I come back to the body, is based upon the execution of the commands of that conversation. When I know that it felt different there. It felt like I was on the beach for 6 hours, whereas when I come back to the body, I would measure that as like 10 minutes. But also, for example, the last astral projection that I performed, the commands were so closely executed to each other. So it's like, let me try this, because I'm experimenting with the realm to see what's possible and what's not. It felt like 15 minutes, and then when I came back to the body, 2.5 hours had passed.
Really?
Because the commands were so quick.
So, the first part that you said...
my memory of that experience is so truncated, because the energy was so high. There were so many things that I did.
So we're almost talking about like it was a very high-frequency vibration.
I guess, yeah. 2.5 hours had passed here. It felt like 15 minutes in memory.
So with hallucinogens, I've never had that side of it.
Okay.
With me,
the opposite side.
With me, the way that hallucinogens have typically worked is You know how we've brought up in previous podcasts, energy flows where attention goes, or
Sure.
whatnot. It's about how much you're paying attention.
Sure.
And for me,
oh yeah, same thing. Yeah, go ahead.
but so for me, the more I'm paying attention, the slower time goes.
Exactly.
But it's like that even if I'm running processes. Like the more processes, that actually slows it down further.
No, that speeds it up.
I've never had that happen.
My experience speeds up. So I imagine it being 15 minutes, but it actually was 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I've never had that happen with hallucinogens.
If I focus, if I become mindful and present, rather than thinking, what should I try next? What should I try next? Because it's fun. You know, you can do anything. You're basically playing life in God mode.
That's kind of funny. So to me, that would say that the differentiation between the two experiences.
So if the more present you can become, you could have an 8-hour experience and come back to your body, look at the clock, and you've been gone for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The less present you are, the more you're thinking. It's the opposite.
So I get what you're saying.
That's my experience.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I've never had the inverse time dilation. With me, if I'm thinking, so it sounds to me, if I could like have some conjecture here,
Sure.
it sounds to me like what's happening with you when you're in that state is that you're actually taking longer to ponder what it is that you want to try, and what's only important is when you come up with something.
And that's
And
all
so-
I'm remembering.
And you're losing the gaps in between those
because
ideas.
I'm not mindful in between those things. So it's almost like the way a computer would measure time. It's based on command. The command that slows time down for me is the command to be present, to be mindful, and to execute no commands. That makes it slow.
That's super-
the fuck
That's super
down.
interesting. Because for me, it's just, even in that scenario, and I don't, like, it's impossible to tell how quickly you can think anything, obviously. There's no speed to that. I know we're talking about computer metrics.
It's all relative. Time is an
exactly.
illusion. Yeah.
So it's like, even when I have those situations where I'm sitting there and I'm really pondering what I can do with, like, and that's usually like on the after peak for me, because now I'm comfortable with my powers, like it's like they're now under my control. I can sit there and change what I'm viewing or what I'm thinking about. Even in that scenario, when I'm post peak, that still slows down time for me.
Okay.
Like, even if I'm processing, like, ooh, it's a fun thing to think about right now. It's like, it's still one of those situations where thinking, like, the in-between thinking it's almost like everything that I do when I'm in that, when I'm in that state is, the whole thing about how, the, like, mental physics kind of exercise where if you throw a ball at a wall, it'll never reach it.
Because you can split the space between the ball and the wall into infinite components. So theoretically, according to that type of thinking and those mathematics, there's infinite space between those two objects, right?
That's what it's like for me all the time. So until my mind collapses onto a thought, all of the intervening thoughts in between just keep stretching time and stretching time and stretching time until I hit a point where I'm like, oh, that's neat. And that's when time will recollapse.
Well, I think there's a difference between, from what you're telling me, being on hallucinogens and astral projecting, in that you're still in your physical memory when you're doing hallucinogens. So your time dilation is always going to be a stretch. So there's a difference, whereas when I'm on the astral plane, I am experiencing X, but the only time I can express it to anybody, of course, is back in my body, where I am remembering Y.
That actually kind of makes sense. That's interesting.
So my physical memory is deleting probably blank spaces.
Yeah, that's funny. It's almost like file compression.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Now, the theory goes that the soul, if you believe in such a thing, which if you have an out-of-body experience, you have to take it at least into consideration, is here to build up experience in order to make itself more powerful so it can survive death. That's the theory. So I would say that conscious astral projection, while you still have a physical form to come back to, while you're still alive, what we call alive, of course it would compress. Of course your physical memory would compress the spiritual experience into, get rid of the gaps. The gaps aren't necessary to the evolution of the soul. It makes sense. Doesn't it?
But
isn't that interesting?
Aren't the gaps necessary?
I think they're necessary here.
Think about music.
They're necessary in this experience. I think that they're unnecessary in the other experience because what you bring back with you. You understand what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I'm just you set my mind going to like.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You have a thought.
Well, when you think about music, and it's like the rests are as important as the notes.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's one of those situations where it's like I'm wondering if that ends up being a stymieing point between physical and metaphysical.
What do you mean by stymieing point?
Just something that distorts translation, that slows down your progress through those kind of meditative practices like astral projection and stuff, because it's like translating something into a different language almost.
So what is a stymieing point between what and what?
The fact that you're missing the dead time, that you're missing the gaps.
You think I wonder if that would make it stymieing?
Well, I'm wondering if it makes things get lost in translation between the astral world.
It's far more difficult for me to be mindful and to slow time down when I'm over there than it is to execute commands. Certainly. I just want to try things.
Yeah, because it's almost like having a game dev toolkit. Like if you sat there and like had backdoor access to a video game and could just fuck around with the systems.
You just want to do shit.
Yeah, you're just like, oh hey, can I make this explode?
Let's say you're in a GTA.
Yeah,
you're not going to walk around and stare at the sidewalk and be like, wow, that texture was done really well, which is being mindful.
Sure.
You're going to be like, let's see if I can shoot that cop. What happens there? I'm going to blow up that helicopter. I'm going to fuck this hooker. Then I'm going to steal her money. And then I'm going to go steal a tank. I'm going to go onto the roof and I'm going to snipe people until I get blown up.
Yeah. You're testing systemic interactions exterior to yourself, as opposed to
being within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting.
Now, the most difficult, maybe you have some insight on this too. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. The most difficult thing, I can leave my body whenever I want. And I started to think when I started this YouTube channel, I was working a lot and I just got so obsessed with editing video and everything that I had no out-of-body experience for months and months and months.
Yeah, because you're focused on exterior.
And I was drinking way too much. And my body was exhausted. It's just like, we need sleep. You're unconscious.
I gotcha.
You're unconscious. And, but once I let it go, and I was like, all right, I built it. We're just going to do our thing. We'll post it when we post it. We'll see what happens. And I let it go. I pulled. So in magic, there's push and then there's pull.
Yeah, it's the ebb and flow, as it were.
So we got over the energy of entropy. We have a channel. It's established. We got a few people watching it. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm just going to pull and I'm going to enjoy the reason why I established this, which was to get together with you, have cool conversations and put them up and see if anybody has anything to say about it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm in pull mode. And as soon as anytime I reestablished the understanding, which I was fearful that I had lost like a superpower. It's like having VR on hand all the time. Anytime I want to get out of body, I can do it now.
Yeah.
Like I can just do it. So the most difficult thing for me to do still is to experience this consensus reality while in an out of body state. Very
well, yeah,
difficult.
I would assume that would be intensely difficult, yeah.
Why? Why is that so difficult? Because people like Robert Monroe, that's where they go automatically, and to get to what they call higher planes is more difficult. I'm always on, the dreamscape or the subconscious or different worlds or interacting with entities that I don't quite understand. But if I want to go see, hey, what's Talking Head number 6 doing in his apartment right now? Really, really super difficult for me to get an objective look at that. But for other people who have this experience, super easy. I don't get that.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if that's a situation that has to do with the grounding between the two realities, because like,
is it that I don't care enough about this one?
That's what I'm curious
I'm not
about.
focused enough on this one.
I don't even know if it's about care or focus. It's
energy flows where attention
I was
goes.
just about to fucking say that. That's funny.
I know.
But yeah, so anytime, because you're doing this as a meditative practice when you sit there and do astral projection and you're trying to figure out.
I'm doing it as experimentation.
But that's what I want to see what the parameters are of the
is.
entire situation and all that. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's something that you're undertaking as a long-term practice.
Mm-hmm.
Taking hallucinogens, it's going to be short-term. In fact, a lot of times I am focused on the fact that it's short-term because
you want to get rid of it.
Well,
once you're there.
Well, you want to get rid of the part that is overwhelming
Fearsome.
Your control.
Right.
Because it basically just takes your subconscious and just pulls it into your conscious. They just merge.
I feel like maybe that's what I'm doing, but I have had interactions with entities that are objectively not me. But I've also had interactions with entities that I could say, yeah, that could definitely be a part of my subconscious.
So
you can tell the difference.
But
Crowley describes this very well. You can tell that you've met something objectively not you because you feel the pain of experiencing something that you are not. It's a different experience.
Okay, I gotcha.
Having to admit to yourself that I am not everything.
How would you cope with literally being everything, though?
I would have to maintain a singular perspective if I was going to experience that simultaneously. I think that would be the definition of ecstasy.
So,
but without a singular perspective, you would just dissolve.
That's the thing that you struggle to control when you're on hallucinogens, is that singular perspective. And that's why it's harrowing for me.
So I'm probably so scared of experiencing something that's not me because I'm scared of losing myself in it.
To literally being something that's not you. And to literally being everything that's not you.
Oh, shit.
That's why I find it enlightening, is because I have to struggle to hold that singular perspective.
That's why I can't walk around this reality without my body.
It's a distinct perspective. It's a distinct possibility.
Because you have to acknowledge that that's you.
Yeah, it's all you.
But then you would feel like maybe you would lose your ego, you would dissolve, you would
and
die.
Not be able to come out of it with the boon.
That's interesting. I never looked at it from that perspective. Shit. So what you're saying is what's blocking me, this makes sense. What's blocking me from being able to do that, interact with physical reality from the out-of-body state, is a type of fear.
Oh, definitely. And trust me, when I am on hallucinogens, when I'm hitting maximum peak, I am a ball of fear that is holding itself together with nothing but sheer fucking willpower.
Oh my god.
Because otherwise, I would disintegrate.
So
I've literally watched my hands dissolve like the wax in a lava lamp.
That doesn't bother me at all.
It was literally my hand from my perspective.
But you can rebuild it!
Sure, and that's the thing you have to keep
I've
telling
done
yourself.
That. And then, you know.
But what I'm saying is when you're in that integrated state,
why is it
hard to
why is an
convince
experience
yourself.
like that so much more fearsome than what I experience? I mean, what are you experiencing when you see your hand dissolve? I experience no pain, no fear.
I feel it.
You feel it? Pain?
Yeah. No, not pain, but I can feel it disintegrating.
Yeah. Like a tingling, like...
I can feel the parts of it that have become separate from me becoming separate.
Integrating with something that is not you.
Yes, with the everything that isn't me and is me.
you feel like you may experience a loss of self, and that creates the fear.
Because
I
parts
gotcha.
of me are drifting away. And I'm only holding on to them by concentrating.
I do not have that fear. So maybe we're wrong about why I can't get here, because I do not have that fear.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, I mean, we're all into like fucking out there metaphysics shit at this point.
That's what the drugs episode was supposed to be about.
I know, but I'm not trying to stop the conversation. I'm saying that's really difficult to discern, because I see both perspectives as valid possibilities. You know what I'm saying? Like to sit there and because
there's got to be something that's blocking me that I'm afraid of.
So
it's probably the same thing that's blocking me from actually trying hallucinogens, whatever that fear is.
I can give it a name. You want the name?
Yeah, let me hear your opinion.
Control.
I can control everything when I'm not in this reality.
Yeah, when I'm on hallucinogens, you are...
So I can meet an entity that I'm sure is not me.
Yeah.
Absolutely certain.
No, I gotcha.
There is the pain of meeting another. It's a metaphysical pain. It's the acknowledgement that you are in the presence of something that is not you. Crowley described that really well.
It's almost a separation anxiety.
Yeah, and I hug that idea because that's how you know. You know?
Yeah.
But if I no longer wish to interact with that entity, I just make it. I do control my experience.
You can't do that.
My experience is entirely under my control.
Yeah. So
if I was here, that's a no-go. Maybe it's not. So you're saying maybe that's what I'm afraid of?
It's not that it's a no-go. It's no longer about control. It's about active influence. Because it's... Man, I'm trying to think of how to fucking describe this.
Keep going, hi guys.
So imagine you ran into one of these entities, and you know that it's not you, but you also know that it is you. And you start feeling the deterioration of the walls between those two concepts. Like just what is you and what isn't you. And then you see and feel the tip of your finger inflate and
peel off yourself.
Yeah, and just start floating in air outside of yourself. And you could still feel it outside of yourself, and you could feel that it's outside of yourself. But it's still a part of you. And if we want to get into the more comedic end of it, the highest manifestation of this fear that got into me was when I went to take a piss.
And you didn't want to release the urine because you were releasing part of yourself.
No.
Oh.
Because I was in such a heightened state.
Okay.
I felt you can almost feel every electron running through yourself.
Oh, that's the way doctors think the schizophrenics experience the universe. They do not know how to filter out sensation.
Yeah. So
they're overwhelmed by their own body.
Yeah. So
and mind.
And I've got to take a piss.
So do I. We'll be right back.
No. In the story. But
shit.
We'll do that in a second.
Okay.
So I've got to take a piss. And I go into the bathroom. And I've broken metal with my bare hands before. I've worked in trades for a very long time. And
oh, you told me about this.
And so it turns into a situation where I am terrified that because of the heightened state of physical awareness that I'm in, that I'm going to literally rip my dick off when I go to pull it out of my fly to take a piss.
That's terrifying.
So, spent 45 hours in the bathroom trying to cope with this. Yeah, 5 minutes normal time. And sat there and gingerly, like, it was
I'm
almost...
sorry, man. We gotta cut. I really do have to piss. Okay. And you're making me have to piss more. All right, gingerly pull out your dick. We'll be right back.
All right. So we are back. Good news. I did not rip my dick off.
Okay, yep. That was funnier.
There you go.
Okay, so but at the time where we left off, you were afraid, so you very gingerly took out your penis.
It was like trying to peel the petals off of a rose. That's the best way I could describe it.
Oh my god. Okay.
But no, like I said, after 5 hours, I finally took my piss, and then everything went back to normal.
How long did the piss last if you're in that type of time dilation?
To be perfectly honest, if I recall correctly, I came out of the bathroom and apologized for my absence, and my two compatriots were just like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, you were there for like 2 seconds. Like, it was normal pee. Was it not normal pee? Is something wrong?"
So they weren't experiencing time dilation.
Not to the level that I was, yeah.
Interesting. There might be, we're related. There might be something in our DNA. Because, I mean, I saw through time. Several. I've given you instances in the last week where I saw through time. Time works wonky with us.
Yeah, it's definitely a conundrum as far as that kind of stuff goes, yeah.
There's got to be something in the DNA that has to do with how our bodies are experiencing time.
Goddamn dykes.
I don't know, man. That's weird.
By the way, that was a joke because we are of Netherlands descent.
Oh, yeah. We're Dutch. We love lesbians. I love watching them do their thing.
I like putting fingers in them like the old the old...
You're doing it again. We just offered an apologetic. Now you're digging us back into the grave.
Nah, my bad.
I like putting fingers in it.
Hey, I'm just trying to prevent them from failing.
You need a male finger in your hole in order not to fail.
Oh, yeah. No, now it sounds terrible.
See? I told you. Don't do that.
Nah, I got you.
Don't do that.
It's fucking Dutch folklore. Look it up.
So, I don't know where to go from there. You were pulling your penis out. You took a piss.
Oh, so yeah, I was just talking about the general state of mind of the time dilation and everything because, you know, it felt like we were just kind of comparing notes on what it's like when under influence and when under self-control, because that's what we were talking about is maybe it's the fact that you might lose control.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think about that because I'm never fearful of that. I have encountered entities that I cannot get close to.
Sure.
That I cannot communicate with because they do not want to communicate with me. They are more powerful than me. But it's always a matter of what do I want to experience. So if I want to leave that entity, you could think of it as me leaving or just changing what I'm honed in on.
Well, what
changing my attention.
What you're doing almost sounds like metaphysical speed dating. I thought it was a funny way to frame it.
Yeah, well, I'm testing things to see if they work.
Yeah, metaphysical speed dating. Is this compatible?
The last out of body experience I had. So usually, if I want to warp to a different setting, I have to turn my back to the wall so I can't see what's going on, and then think of a door that's going to lead me to where I want to go. 95% of the time, I'll turn around, look at the wall, and there's a door there. 60% of the time when I open the door, it leads me to where I want to go. So I tried something different this time. I stuck my hands into the wall and pulled it apart. It wasn't easy. And on the other side was instantaneously exactly where I wanted to be. Never tried that before. Just pulled the wall. Now, I can fly through walls, but there's a space where I can't see anything, but it's all expectation. It's all expectation of experience. Just like this life, except this life seems more concrete because it's consensus life and it's serial.
Yeah, and because the way time flows here is very completely linear.
Very linear.
And so that turns into a situation where you can...
Memory is suspect in that.
Oh, of course.
Because
and any police officer or lawyer or whatever will tell you that people's memories are completely fucked.
Just because you woke up this morning...
with a blue moon in your eye.
And you have 40 some odd years of memories behind you doesn't mean that yesterday when you woke up you had the same memories. A la Dark City. You could be a completely different person, not know
It
it.
was such a good movie.
So
I feel like
dependent
that's
on your-
underrated.
It's so underrated, but it's completely dependent upon the serial experience. Is so dependent upon your memories, and a lot of modern occultists, especially, will prescribe if you want to change your future, you have to change your past, rewrite your past, reprogram your brain so that you remember a different past, and that will actually achieve different results in your future.
Yeah, and
that makes sense.
It's a creation of mythos, and the same thing
Mhm.
can be said of civilization. It's
Sure.
a collective.
If you
version
rewrite
of that,
history,
yeah.
you're changing the collective memory that's going to influence future events.
Sure. I mean, imagine if Nazi Germany had won World War II.
Oh, The Man in the High Castle.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. So it's
Did you watch that?
I did not watch it. I'm aware of the book, and I know the plot.
It's so good. So good.
No, I'll have to check it out. There's a lot of stuff that I've got on a backlog because between you and my one friend who's a film buff, like he actually has like a degree in fucking.
All right. Well, if
film and all
you're
that
gonna
shit.
watch one thing that I recommend, it has to be Mad God.
Mad God.
I told you about that. That's a stop animation thing.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I watched the trailer for it. Yeah, it looks very interesting.
You gotta dude, watch it high. Highly recommend.
Watch it.
Really fucking high. Thank you. What's that comedian's name?
Bill Hicks.
Thank you, Bill Hicks, as recorded by Tool.
Well, as sampled by Tool.
Sampled by Tool. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, the hallucinogen experience, like, I mean, that whole story again, and we could just do the full 37 hours that I was, high or whatever, but I feel like that's less interesting. I mean, it's funny.
It's funny.
But I mean, I don't think it's as interesting a conversation as the one that we're having around that framework.
Yeah, well, it's metaphysics because the metaphysics is a part of philosophy. There's 5 major components of philosophy: eschatology, metaphysics, aesthetics, and I can never remember the last 2. But I mean, it is
Rosemary and Thyme.
it is a part of how you live your life. It's how you perceive the universe. So I think it's important for people to come to a conclusion about what reality and experience actually are.
Well, and what the purpose of reality
That's
is.
how you create meaning.
Yeah.
But that's a decision. And I'm going to bring up an Anton LaVey quote again. One does not find oneself, one creates oneself. And I'm going to say that for meaning. One does not find meaning, one creates meaning. If you're finding meaning, it means somebody else created it, and you have just adopted a god to worship. And I think we talked about that in the last episode.
Yeah, and I would say that the main differentiating factor there ends up being you can explore whatever you want to explore.
Infinitely.
The decision has to be adoption.
What do you mean?
So, like, if I want to sit there and you can read whatever philosophy and sit there and explore whatever you want to explore,
Sure.
The question is do I feel like this is something that I should integrate? You know what I mean?
Yes, and here's the difficult conclusion that I had to come to. I've only been able to travel out of my body since the year 2012, and this was a major reality shift for me. I've been practicing magic and the occult since I was very young, but I always considered, when I read other grimoires or other magicians' experiences, I always considered them to be allegory.
Sure, I can understand that because I'm very... Anyway, go on, sorry.
So if somebody's talking about traveling the astral plane, I was like, oh, that's a deep meditation where you have an active imagination exercise. I didn't realize that this was as fundamentally real as this universe until it occurred in my life. And it occurred in 2012 for the first time when I experienced the death of a loved one and the death of a dream that was very close to my heart. And all of a sudden, I was so afraid of death, I felt trapped in my flesh.
It's stifling.
It was like a psychosis. And I was like, oh my God, this is all I am and someday I'm going to die. Oh my God, this is all I am and someday I could barely sleep. Watching this person die in hospice. And all of a sudden, one day, pop. And I'm just walking around my living room. Now, that's hard for me to do now, but the first experience that I had was like, pop. The only thing that wasn't right about what I was witnessing was I couldn't find my body. So I looked down at the couch and I wasn't there, but I knew I wasn't in my body. I was like, what the fuck is this?
For some reason, I was just reminded of the line, "My eyes, I can't see my
eyes."
eyes."
Dude, that's so insightful. My eyes, I can't see my eyes. Well, I'm out of my body. Why can't I see my body? Everything else is your eyes. Oh, I love it. That's so insightful. That's so deep. I can't even just. Wow.
It's funny because it's such a ludicrous throwaway line, but it's like there's this
subtle
incisive,
weird thing about that line. My eyes, I can't see my eyes, which is from a
Jonan Vasquez,
Jonan Vasquez comic book from our youth. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Yeah, so that was, and since that, I spent an entire year basically not sleeping.
That's from Fight Club.
Almost.
I'm just saying that's a literal line from Fight Club from the narrator.
Oh, is it?
For a year, I didn't sleep.
Well, it happened to me, except my body was asleep all the time.
Yeah, your mind just wasn't in.
It's just
that
I never blacked out and came back. There were no gaps. I was just
continuous consciousness,
traveling continuous consciousness for a year. And I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't feel lesser for it.
It didn't wear on you?
No. You know what wore on me? When I described, because it was such a unique experience, I described it to other people and they became worried. And that energy started to wear me down.
Okay, so it was the external influence of judgment that, or what you perceived as judgment.
Worry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I was like, oh my God, maybe there is something wrong with me.
The funny thing is that I that's such a funny psychological thing that ends up happening where people see concern as a burden.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's...
like I was the same person. I had the same amount of energy.
Oh, sure.
I had the same interests. Nothing had changed except I don't sleep anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, but the amount of concern that I got when I was excited about it. That's why I started talking about it, and the amount of rejection that those ideas, like nobody else is excited. And of course, it's a subjective experience. I can't share it with anybody.
Well, and on top of that, it's regardless.
And then, hey,
of how many
are you okay? Do you have a brain tumor? You know.
Well, regardless of how many people have experienced it, it's still something that's unique in each experience, even if the experiences are not unique. You know what I mean?
I've read a lot of astral projection books at this point. I've never read about somebody who did not have an absence of consciousness for a year. So that was a little bizarre, but it didn't wear on me at all.
That's interesting.
And that's when I started because I went from needing 12 hours of sleep a day.
Oh yeah, you were a prolific sleeper.
To literally only needing, if I don't drink anything, 3.
Yeah, like if I'm not,
I've been up for 28 hours at this point, and I'm drunk. And I'm probably going to sleep for 6, but right now I feel okay.
Oh, sure, and I would like to think that the nature of the conversation is interesting enough to keep you
drawing energy from it like a fucking psychic vampire. But yeah, so that's actually when my sleep patterns changed dramatically. I went from needing 12 hours of sleep a night to just resting my body for 3, and my consciousness was continuous. And even now I do sleep where I do black out, lose consciousness, and then regain it. But still, if I don't drink anything, 3 or 4 hours is fine.
No, yeah.
And that's a total 180 from what I used to require.
Yeah, because I like I said, you were a prolific sleeper.
Yeah, I could Rip Van Winkle myself out of existence.
Oh yeah, if you had a day off, I remember like, you know, you sitting there going to bed at like midnight and waking up at 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Without drinking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there was no recovery. It was just like, I don't want to be up.
Why would I want to be here?
Why would I want to be? And also, I'm tired. So I was tired all the time.
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is that
I almost feel like the death thing almost connected me to an energy source. That's the way it feels.
I mean, and
I'm conscious.
There's a lot of that in
I'm conscious
antiquity.
of energy to take advantage of now, but it's not something that I can perceive in like the frontal lobe area. It's just like I feel enlivened doing this. Let's keep doing that. It's just like following my instincts, but they're not bodily instincts. They're just like, this is how I feel. Let's just maintain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's following an energy flow, kind of.
It feels like I tapped into something that I was so out of sync with before. It's weird. It's hard to describe.
No, and I can completely understand that because, again, like the hallucinogen version of that is you never disconnect while you're in that state
From
yourself, I guess. So
Okay.
it's like there's never like I can't find my body.
I've only experienced that a couple times, and it was rectified pretty quickly. I think that's largely a myth.
Sure,
It's actually harder to stay out than it is to get back in.
No, and you had talked about that with me before, how almost like sometimes when like early on when you became cognizant of the fact that you were astral projecting, you would sit there and feel like almost a gravitational pull back to your body just by becoming aware of the fact that you were out of it.
Mm-hmm. So I could last, it started off like maybe a minute, and then I would just experience everything would fade out, go black, and then slowly I'd feel tingly, and I'd experience my body again. But I became aware very quickly. This is before I started reading books. This was just an instinct. If I stay perfectly still, don't open my eyes, and focus on that energy and that stillness and dip my consciousness back down, I can exit again immediately. But I'd have to come back like every minute or so. And the longer that you do it, the last time I astral projected, like I said, it felt like 15 minutes. I was out for 2.5 hours. Continuous.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Continuous. Out. And the weird thing is, you want to hear something really creepy about that? This has never happened to me before. You know how a lot of ghost hunters and things will talk about how they have like flashlights and shit. Oh no!
No. All that popped into my head was the South Park episode with the ghost hunters. Oh, it made my pants wet too.
There's ectoplasm running down my leg. What is it? What is it? Oh my god! He's just pissing himself.
That's what just popped into my head. That's why I had to cover my face. Is because
no, dude, those shows are ridiculous. They're totally.
And I love South Park's fucking take on it. It was so good.
They're perfect. But I do love those shows. And something that they experience continuously is the batteries get drained from their electric devices. So when I went into astral projection, I had my my wireless headphones on, my Bluetooth headphones, and I was listening to some ambient music and my binaural beats.
Yeah. I know you use the binaural beats
from the Monroe Institute.
Yeah, meditating and all that.
And it was full battery. 2.5 hours later, I came back to my body and I was about to try to get out again. Then the music stopped, but the beats were still on. I was like,
the music died.
all right, that's weird. And then the voice came on in my headphones and it said, low battery. I was like, what? And I picked up my phone because my phone displays the battery level when it's synced up. And yeah, it was almost dead. In 2.5 hours, I went from full battery to dead.
Huh. Interesting.
So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's weird.
No, I gotcha. And the funny thing is that as much as we understand about the science of the
energy,
consensual world and all that,
sure.
Electricity and gravity,
we don't really understand what they are.
Yeah, we know how to harness and use them, but we don't understand their true nature, so to speak.
There's a really good quote from a book that I've been reading over and over and over again called The Key by Whitley Strieber, where the gentleman who's quoted in the book says, conscious energy is not like the energy that what does he call it? Not natural energy. The energy that we understand, like electromagnetic, or it's not like that where if you understand its laws, you can control it. Conscious energy you have to have a relationship with, because it's conscious with itself. And I always found that very beautiful.
And that's interesting to tie it back into the drugs. Is because there's definitely, when you're in that state, when you're in a hallucinogenic state.
We might not call this episode the drugs episode. We might call this the drugs and magic episode. Go ahead.
Nah, I gotcha. But when you're in that kind of state that's chemically induced as opposed to psychically induced, if you want to call it that.
I don't see a difference, but go ahead.
Well, so I feel like the difference is that you're manipulating biochemistry in order to induce. I mean, if you wanted to, you could really call it a psychotic episode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't characterize it as that, but just because that has negative connotations that I don't think are deserved by it.
But you're outside of the normal spectrum of consensus reality.
Yeah, and
you're experiencing something outside that.
Sure, but while you're still inside of it, I think might be because I'm trying to figure out what the differentiating.
Because you're still in your body, you're still in consensus reality, but your experience is not consensus reality.
Yes, and no, because it's both at once. That's I guess what the thing is to me is that it's almost like instead of pulling yourself from one to the other, you're pulling the two of them together. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to do without drugs. I want to get to that point. I want to be able to manipulate consensus reality from the out of body.
Now, I don't think that chemically induced.
I want to run out of my body and tip a lamp over, go back to my body, and see it tipped over. I've only been able to do something like that once, and it was by accident.
Oh, really? Well, no, I'm curious. Go on.
No, talk about your thing first.
No. I was just trying to bring the two things together, like we were talking about, to bring both of the realities into one, because I do feel like they're related in a certain extent.
They have to be.
And so
I think that the divide is an illusion.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is I'm trying to figure out the difference between chemically induced versus...
Oh, I meant experiential reality versus consensus reality. Subjective versus objective.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that I'm like in not juxtaposition, but in parallel to that, I think it's interesting to try to think of the way that doing it with chemicals versus doing it with meditation... Because I'm wondering if maybe there's some kind of insight to be gleaned there.
Well, here's why I don't see a huge difference between the two philosophically. Because in meditation...
philosophically, I think they're the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, that's what I was saying. Because if you do it through meditation or through happenstance, because it just happened to me, and then I decided to try to cultivate it rather than run from it. If you do it through meditation, you are actually exercising endogenous chemicals in your mind to get to that point, most likely. To take chemicals into your body in order to excite that state of consciousness, it's the same thing. Because the chemicals are simply a physical manifestation and representation of the psychological state and the energetic manifestation that's going on within the individual at the time.
I wonder if the forced induction has something to do with it. The fact that as a hallucinogen, you can't get away from it. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true. Because if you're producing those chemicals by will, rather than
once
by
the will
induction,
breaks, the chemicals die
recede.
down.
That's true. And DMT is a good example of that.
See, I don't know a lot about DMT, and I know that, I think Joe Rogan talks about it and stuff like that. It's just, so what is DMT exactly? Because I'm curious about
Well,
this.
he talked about that, and the way that he described it was actually exactly what I experienced on one of my astral travels. Except he did DMT with a bunch of other people at the same time. Now, here's the weird thing about DMT. It's an endogenous chemical in the brain, your liver. Your body produces it within itself.
Okay.
And this is the only psychedelic that you can do where if you do it with 6 other people at the same time, you're all going to experience the same thing. You're all going to experience
my question would be, how do they know
same
that?
thing and entities. Because once they're sober, they're like, I saw a big blah, 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 saying blah, 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 blah. And they're all like, yep, I did too.
Yeah, so anytime I've done acid with other people,
that's weird. That's like a dimensional gateway. That's not a subjective experience.
Are they conversing about it while they're? I'm just curious. Like I'm not
know.
trying to debunk.
He doesn't.
I'm just questioning.
I think that this experience, I've never done it. So
no, I know.
got
I
this
was
from
wondering
Joe
what he
Rogan,
said,
and
yeah.
there's I've heard it's a great documentary, DMT, the God Molecule or something on Netflix. I've never watched it.
I'd be curious to check it out.
I should check it out. But from what I hear, when you do this with other people, you're all experiencing the same reality. It's not subjective.
Now, does this
But it
have to
is
do with physical
completely-
proximity, or could it, like you and I do it across the country? And
I don't know.
have
I don't think it's been tested to that extent.
Because I'm curious, because I know about some of the ESP experiments that they've done where they've sat there and like
Sure.
chemically induced two people who were in a romantic couple and put them in like isolation chambers,
Yes.
and they've subjected one to stimuli and the other's brain patterns.
Generally speaking, that can only happen with people who meditate regularly. And-
Well, that's why they specifically chose people who were in intimate relationships to do it, is because they knew that would have a.
but I mean, who
testing
also
that, yeah.
meditate regularly in order to.
Yeah, I wonder what the controls
haven't-
were on that
They
experiment.
haven't tried that. I don't think
tangentially.
they were successful with that with people who do not meditate as a regular practice.
Huh?
I
Interesting.
don't. From what I've read, also Rupert Sheldrake and his theory of morphic resonance. Rupert Sheldrake is great. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here because I can't remember a lot of what he's about, but morphic resonance is an extremely fascinating theory.
Deep in the weeds.
Deep in the weed.
But yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So, but if you don't want to get like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I just
it
wanted
might
to
be
bring
a bit
it up.
tangential. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if anybody's interested in looking up Rupert Sheldrake, I think that's his name, and his theory of morphic resonance. It's a really fascinating theory, but I think I'm too drunk to do it justice right now.
Oh, totally understandable.
Yeah.
So, so I guess where do we want to go from here? Do we want to keep dissecting the difference between chemically induced and meditative? What do you think is the most interesting way to go with this conversation?
Well, I'm looking at my notes, and I wanted this to be a really chill, let's just bullshit podcast. So I was talking about in my notes the reason why this may be illegal. Drugs.
Nah, I gotcha. Okay.
And why would a society make something illegal that obviously everybody wants to do?
Racism.
Like milk.
Milky,
and
milky
exercise.
racism.
Because it makes it easier for them to profit off it. That's obvious.
Oh, no, and I was bringing that up as a joke because obviously we've done a lot of stuff to demonize drugs that involves racial fears and stuff like that, and that's just...
Oh, yeah.
that's like-
Crack was like, oh, well, they're just drug addicts. And then the
Cocaine was like, oh, well, they're just go-getters.
And then the opiate crisis is like, oh, that's a travesty, because all of a sudden it's like crack cocaine for white people. That's a travesty. But when black people were having a problem with drugs, it's because they're drug addicts.
Well, here's... so
that's
funny...
fucked up.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too in the weeds on that, but the funniest thing to me that is a point that I've heard brought up recently...
I'm sorry, opioid, not opiate. Opioid crisis.
So... when you think about crack cocaine versus actual crack cocaine versus powder cocaine, they made such a fuss about crack that they sat there and they made the mandatory minimum sentences. Like, so if you got busted, somebody showed a picture of it on a thing that I watched, that when that was at its absolute peak, that like a crack rock that was like this big,
Like
would net you
smaller than a penny.
Would net you more jail time than like a fucking pound of cocaine.
That's
because
crazy.
white people did cocaine and black people did crack.
Because cocaine's expensive.
And
it's
crack's
not
cheap. Yeah.
It's not white and black. Really, it's green. Cocaine's expensive. Crack is cheap.
I will agree with you there. The funny thing is
The only crime in America
is being poor.
Is being poor.
Yeah. But the funny thing is when you're actively making a specific group of people be statistically more poor.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
I will never argue that there is not systemic racism in our society. Never.
Yeah, it's
obvious.
Yeah, it's a very silly thing that we've done over time. But yeah, I in all honesty, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like the opioid crisis was very progressive because it brought everybody together. You know, like it was a problem for blacks and whites.
Blacks like Dave Chappelle were going on stage and saying, "Now you motherfuckers are dealing with it," or whatever the fuck he said. And whites were like, "Oh no, we all have to band together." It wasn't so with crack.
So yeah, I do feel like the opioid crisis helped us heal some racial divides.
Chappelle. He's so wise.
But yeah, I feel like the opioid crisis really helped us heal some racial divides.
If you're open to that perspective, but not a lot of people are, man. Are you being sarcastic?
I'm being facetious. I'm not being sarcastic.
Okay.
Like it's one of those things where it's like, that was pure fucking money-based shit.
Yeah.
But at least they didn't divide people with that pure money-based shit by race like they did with the crack and the cocaine. You know, it's like, it was... anyway.
Well, I don't know. I mean, were black communities targeted with crack?
Yeah, crack.
And you're saying that white communities weren't targeted with the OxyContin?
No, with cocaine. So I'm drawing.
Cocaine.
Yeah.
Okay,
So powder cocaine versus rock cocaine. Rock cocaine was prevalent in black communities. Powder cocaine
I thought that was just
prevalent
because
in
it was
affluent white
cheaper
communities.
and they
but
tend
that's
to
what I'm
be
saying.
poor. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that at least with the opioid crisis, we moved past that. Rich and poor people alike have a problem with opioids. So, you know, like,
yes, they
black
do.
and white people have equal problems with opioids. So it's like, I'm glad that it's been uniting in a racial sense to have this particular capital-driven enrichment issue.
Hey, listen, we're all inhabiting these hairless monkey
We're all
bodies.
pink on the inside.
We're all pink on the inside. And listen, man, you get addicted to heroin, that shit's difficult. You get addicted to coke, that shit's difficult to kick.
Immediately, what popped into my head was Bob Saget's "I used to suck dick for heroin."
I used to suck dick for heroin. How dare you say you're addicted to weed, motherfucker? What's that from?
Half Baked.
Half Baked. That's right. Which Dave Chappelle?
Yeah, exactly.
That.
Dave Chappelle.
Fucking love that guy, man. I fucking love that guy. All right, there's some things I wanted to get to with Russell Brand and sex versus violence, puritanical ethics, and the ties to religion with making things illegal that everybody wants to do. But I feel like our last podcast was very politically heavy, and maybe we should just keep this one light with like little drug conversations, metaphysical conversations, and we haven't done that yet. And I thought it was a lot of fun.
Oh, I've been having a good time with the conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I don't want to bring it back to what I keep saying people shouldn't pay attention to, and then keep
drawing attention to it.
Yeah,
it seems kind of antithetical to the point that you were making in the last podcast. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we could always break it up with some hang drum music.
Yeah, I forgot you wanted to show me that.
Yeah,
all right, so let's listen to this. And then when we're done listening to this music, we're just going to let it go for a little bit. I'll cut it in post where I think is appropriate. Do you want to do Alex Jones' invocation while you're high, motherfucker?
Oh, sure. We can do that. That's fine.
You want
we can continue the conversation, too. I mean, I don't know how long you want it to go or whatever.
Oh, well, we're either going to...
Because, I mean, you're like 26 hours in, so...
We're either going to... Oh, I'm fine. We're either going to continue the conversation for another 20 minutes or so, or we're going to do the Alex Jones.
All right, that's fine.
It's totally up to you. I don't care.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
All right, so let's listen to some music, man.
So, to preface this,
okay.
I
keep forgetting you had that clip up, man. I'm drunk. That's my drug.
This gentleman is obviously insanely talented, and you'll see in the video the amount of coordination that it takes to do this must be like fucking like you have to.
So this chick who was like a professional acid taker played this for you while you were high?
Yes.
Okay.
So here we go. It's called Tunnel. That's a hang drum on the left there. That thing that looks like a double-sided shield.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
It's very interesting. Like it's a percussive instrument. Here we go. But look at him playing this fucking weird rubber band maraca with his one hand while he's playing the drum with his other. And each of those nubs on that like makes a different tone.
That's so cool.
Look at him go, though. That's nuts.
So cool. I wish I had skill like that.
Just keeping that rhythm with that one hand. So for anybody who's not watching, he's got like maracas that are on bands that he's just flipping around his hand. And now here we go into the nice soothing part of it. But yeah, so for anybody who's not watching, this thing looks like a fucking turtle shell.
No, it looks like a fucking
shield.
UFO with dents in
Yeah.
it. That's what
but
it looks
each of
like.
the dents is shaped differently, so you get a different tone out of hitting your thumb at different spots.
That's so cool. Yeah, he's got a UFO on his lap.
Don't worry, everybody. He's gonna pick up the maraca again for the finale.
Dude, this is beautiful.
Isn't it gorgeous?
I love it.
But yeah, white guy dreads. I mean, obviously, very druggy kind of.
Oh, well, hey, man, this is the drugs episode. It's totally
exactly.
appropriate. It's totally
Here we
appropriate.
go. It's coming back in.
Playing the band maraca or whatever it's called with one hand and doing the fucking drum with the other hand.
Nah, like, I am insanely impressed by this guy's ability.
This guy's great.
But it's like, even if you weren't watching what he was doing, it would still be a beautiful little piece of music.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watching how he's making it by himself is fucking fascinating to me.
Well, understanding that all those sounds are coming from one person's coordination and dexterity is what makes it impressive.
Yeah.
More impressive.
Here we go. Speeding it up.
Oh, 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 oh!
The way he ends it is so great, too.
How can somebody wear two hoodies? He's wearing two hoodies. Alright, I don't have a problem with the white guy dreads. I do have a problem with two hoodies. You're just trying too hard.
He's trying very hard to be hippie.
Yeah. You know how I used to say that I saw a unicorn when guys started wearing full beards and they were all hipsters?
Yeah, yeah.
I saw a unicorn. I saw a Joggy McBeardy.
He ends it with a high five of a guy.
That was in
passing by.
beat. That
Yep.
was in beat. That's great.
Isn't that fucking phenomenal?
That's great. I love it.
So
I love
good.
it. So what was your
Hold on, gotta kill this.
kill it
Kill it with fire. Kill it with fire.
Kill it.
All right,
All right.
it's dead.
So what was your experience listening to that while you were like dick deep in acid?
Oh, so again, like that. So that there was that and like two other songs or whatever. That was obviously a 57 song playlist that lasted like 875 hours. So yeah, no, it was wonderful.
But you heard like children like laughing. And
Oh my god, yeah, I've got to find that one at some point because just to like, I don't know if we should do that for the podcast or whatever, but it's like there's just it's two guys who are playing that instrument, the hang drum, and they're sitting there and they're playing in like a packed like city square in some kind of Asian country.
Yeah.
And so there's kids like who are like, again, it's an impressive thing that they do with that instrument. It looks neat, you know?
Yeah.
And so the kids are giggling and stuff watching them, but having this running in the background, I just kept hearing kids giggling. I'm like, where the fuck are those kids? Somebody, the kids.
Where are those little gremlins?
And it freaked me out because I just kept hearing it. And then finally I realized that what I thought was like just this insanely long playlist was like 5 songs on loop.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're almost audibly hallucinating clairaudience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely turned into a imagined oral phenomenon.
Maybe the difference between the drug experience and the astral experience is that the body is imprinting on the soul in a drug experience, and the other way the soul is imprinting on the body.
I could see that. I could see that as a possibility.
Because I've had clairaudience experiences.
Mm.
I told you about the birds chirping when I had the visitor.
Yeah.
totally awake in my body. And there were definitely no birds chirping. Or the rain falling through my apartment that Whitley Strieber also experienced when he had visitor experiences.
Have you ever ended up in temporal liminal spaces?
Explain what that is.
So, like, to be like, for instance, if we were in a house, to be in that place displaced by time to the point where the roof's caved in and stuff like that while you're there experiencing it.
I don't know.
Because I've had that before when I've been on drugs, where it's like,
really?
yeah,
Like you can see it in the future in a state of decay?
Yeah, and also like the rain's dripping through the ceiling kind of shit, and then you're not wet.
No, I don't think so. That's cool.
No, it's definitely interesting, and again, it, like, up to anybody. What's reality?
So you can oh man, if anybody, including you, want to have a difficult time reading a bunch of books that I think really offers a concise view of what reality actually is, I would highly recommend Thomas Campbell's My Big Toe. TOE stands for Theory of Everything. And he describes our universe as a digital universe, basically like existing in a video game. The Planck length of time, you can quantize things that are supposed to be steady constants. There's no such thing in our reality as analog measurements. Everything is quantized, therefore it is digital. And the way he describes reality just makes so much fucking sense.
You know what? I don't know. I'm going to say this just because who knows?
And this guy's a physicist, by the way.
No,
but he was also a member of the Monroe Institute, and he is a huge practitioner of the out-of-body experience.
Yeah, so all I was going to say is a lyric from an orgy song.
Okay.
As she dreams in digital because it's better than nothing now that control is gone. It felt pertinent just because we were talking about control of the experience.
I think
before.
yeah, well, what was I saying the other night when we had that conversation? And I said I probably want to talk about this on a podcast. I think it's a good idea, but we both kind of came up with it in tangentially, I think is the right word. However you think reality works, you're right.
Yeah.
Because you are a self-manifesting being and you are projecting that experience onto your external experience.
Well, and you're not only affected by reality, you're affecting reality.
Exactly. It's a relationship.
And it's the we were talking about in the other podcast,
because reality is basically conscious energy, and you are a manifestation of conscious energy.
Yeah.
The more of a relationship you have with it, the more you're affected by it.
And the more you can affect it.
And the more you can affect it. But the more you're affected by it is why, people who have enlightenment experiences or Kundalini activation will act very emotionally in inappropriate times and things like that. The Sufis and their dances, there's a lot that goes into it.
Do you remember that time that we were at Nude Night in Florida and I started crying because of those gymnasts?
Yeah. Yeah, you watched a half-naked man and woman do a dance together that was very gymnastically oriented, but it was perfect beauty, human form. Just two human bodies together creating art.
Yeah, and I just wept.
And my
powerful.
girlfriend came to me and was laughing at you, and I turned around to her and I said, "How fucking dare you? He's being moved by something. What are you, in high school? How dare you demean that experience?" And she got like really upset and walked away. I was like, "But I'm right."
Yeah, because she was doing a little bit of a Nelson haha.
Yeah. Ha-ha! Yeah, like, how dare you? Let him experience that. That's beautiful. I wish I was having the experience that he's having right now. I wish I was crying. Fuck you. You can't see the beauty in that? I wish I was affected by it as deeply as you were.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about transcendence is you can never entirely control or put your finger on it.
Transcendence is a sticky word. Do you want to be affected by reality, or do you want to affect reality? Because if you want to affect reality, you're going to see that emotions are under your control. Things that you identify as yourself are completely subject to your whim and your control.
But transcendence, to me anyway,
You're transcending emotions.
you're transcending that system. It's not about giving in. It's not about giving up. It's not about controlling. It's about giving in, being controlled. To me, that's what the transcendence.
Giving what?
Giving in being the form of control. You are controlling it by surrendering.
Yeah. But
I'm just spitballing, so yeah.
it seems to make the experience more poignant when it's fought.
I think it depends on...
In accepting things, they seem to dissolve into background noise.
It's not about accepting. I feel like
now, if you focus on it and you choose to identify with it, you can feel it fully. It's there, but it is not swaying your consciousness.
So I would posit a distinction between the two of acceptance versus embracing. So, like, accepting something is to be like, this is what it is. To embrace something is, this is what it is, and I will become one with it.
Yeah, but that's under the control of your choice.
Sure, but I'm saying it's the... Man, it's a really metaphysical... It's
so, in other words, I don't want to make this political, but you see all these people on TikTok that I got misgendered and they're weeping into the camera. I believe that's a genuine emotion. I don't think they're acting.
Oh, no, 100%. I don't think that's performative. I think they're engrossed in it, yeah.
They're completely identified with what they're feeling. Now, to transcend something, you have the choice. You feel something. It's there. And if you choose to identify with that feeling for the sake of the experience, you're welcome to do so. But it can never, ever overwhelm you again. Here's a dark side of what we would call transcendence. The dark side of transcendence is that you are never capable of being overwhelmed by it once you've transcended it ever again. And that for a little bit, to have more control, it mutes the experience, the unexpected experiences that you go through day by day a bit. You can't be overwhelmed by it anymore.
So I think you're thinking of it in a very specific way.
I'm thinking about it the way that I've experienced it. And I can only tell you my experience.
Sure. So to me, I would give a broader definition to transcendence where
and I might be missing something.
Where transcendence to me is something where it's by literal definition beyond me, beyond you, beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an embracing of the sameness and differences that allows you to move into a different paradigm, I guess.
Yeah, you have a different relationship with those feelings. The feelings are still there.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to transcend feeling. I'm trying to transcend current humanity.
What are you trying to transcend? Because once you transcend the thing, you can never be affected by it the same way again. So it's kind of like once you're an adult, you look back with fondness on your childhood.
The halcyon days of your youth. Yeah.
And I wish I could go back there. Do you? No, you were looking forward to growing up. It's different. It's not better or worse. It's different.
So I guess maybe transcendence isn't the word I'm looking for then. And I don't know what is.
A passive embracing?
It's... The best way that I can think of to describe it is to allow something to engulf you while you engulf it. And by becoming one with it, becoming something more that each thing is separate. So it's
that's almost like what we would in physical space call a sexual union with something.
Sure.
Then you can have a sexual union with something that's abstract. And a lot of that is what sex magic is based on.
Sex magic.
So you're kind of just ultimately climaxing in your relationship to a thing, where you become one with it, but you're also experiencing the height of your differentiation at the same time with the mini death.
Yeah, and so I guess that's more of what I was thinking of as far as transcendence goes. So maybe I'm using the wrong terms then.
No, you can do that. The way I think of transcendence is to have transcended something. You are beyond the thing. The thing is now
You, my friend,
is there, but it's under your control.
A, control. You brought it up again, and B.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but
Okay,
B.
control is huge. I have no problem with that.
Oh, sure, but I was saying because we had brought that up as a possible stymieing point for your progression.
Sure. You do have to surrender. Correct. In certain ways, in certain cases, you do have to surrender. But what I'm starting to think is that what you surrender to, like they say, surrender to God. I'm God.
Sure.
You're God.
And both of those things exist at once. And so to surrender to both almost tears you apart atomically.
No.
That's what I'm trying to just, like, that's how it feels with the hallucinogen experience. That's why it's so difficult to maintain.
That's what you call transcendent.
Yeah, because it's this
I gotcha.
It's this thing where you're being torn apart and put together at the same time, and to hold that strange in-between state is what, to me, I find enlightening.
I said early on in this conversation, to be able to perceive of myself as completely individual, yet apart, or being everything
apart
at the same time.
Yeah.
Apart and a part, but also not just a part, but the whole of everything at the same time, like a hologram. I would consider that to be ecstasy. I think that that's the goal, to be able to perceive it yourself as a separate thing while you can also see that you are everything at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm talking about as a transcendent experience. Like, it's very difficult to describe.
But what happens after that is that necessarily you cannot be overwhelmed unless you choose to be. But you can't be accidentally overwhelmed. It takes the surprise a little bit out of life. There's a living death to the aftermath of that experience.
I feel like
if it's permanent, if you experience it in a moment, that's great, because that's a surprise within itself.
Well, and that moment's permanent,
and it's overwhelming.
Time doesn't exist anyway. Yeah,
sure. But if it becomes a permanent evolution within yourself, I do have to argue that if that becomes a state of being that you can access whenever you choose to, you can access whatever you want whenever you choose to, you are in control of the thing. It means that you can never again can't be surprised. You can't be overwhelmed by accident. You have to choose to be overwhelmed. So it mutes.
I get what you're saying. I don't think it has to mute it, though.
So somebody pointing a gun at somebody's face.
Oh, yeah. Absolute moment of terror. Yeah.
It's just, okay, death.
But
you know what I mean?
I get what you're driving at.
So the other day, I didn't tell you this because I don't care anymore. 2 weeks ago, I was going to the office, and I drive in very early. You know this. Yeah. So I'm on the road 4:30 in the morning. It's pitch black, and we're in the country. And I hit a light. Now there's other people going to work, and light's green, man. Now I'm at a T where I have a straight ahead, and then there's a road to the right.
Nah, I gotcha.
There's a dude stopped at his red light. I got a green light. I'm going 60 miles an hour. Shouldn't be going that fast. The dude behind the guy who stopped at the red just flips around him, makes a screeching right turn right in front of me. Almost hit him. I blared my horn. I hit the brakes. My heart rate didn't even increase. I didn't want to identify with it. I just didn't want to identify with fear. It was there if I wanted to access it, but I didn't have a physiological reaction to it. I wanted to go to the Turkey Hill that was just past the light, and that's exactly where I pulled into, and I got a cup of coffee. My legs weren't even shaking. I almost got into a 60-mile-an-hour accident. Didn't care.
No, yeah, I gotcha.
But here's the thing. I didn't. I didn't get in the accident. So, okay.
No, yeah, no, I don't have anything to say against that. I'm just,
So some people would look at that and say, are you dead inside? No, I get to choose what I access.
Sure, and I do think that
it's all there, but if I don't want to experience something, I can just be like, not right now. Maybe not ever.
I guess maybe that's the thing that I'm seeing as a differentiating factor between the hallucinogen experience is like, you can't not experience that.
You'd experience it 10 times what a normal person would.
Oh yeah, it would be like that to it, like tenfold. Yeah,
it's control.
Yeah.
It's control. Now, do you think that control, by your definition of transcendence, do you think that control comes into play in transcendence? Because my argument is that, yep, right there's an example. It does in my experience.
I guess transcendence might not be the word that I'm trying to access there, though.
We could both have different definitions of transcendence. That's fine. I think it's an interesting thing to discuss briefly. We're almost done.
Yeah, no, I know that semantics are.
And I think that whatever we land on will be a good place to close. But I think it's an interesting thing to think about. How do you define transcendence? Are you in control, or are you simply embracing all of that experience and you're being overwhelmed by everything? There's got to one or the other, man. It can't be both, can it?
There is a duality to nature, though, that almost makes you wonder, maybe that's the answer, is that it can be both?
But it can
or that it is both?
But here's how it can be both in time. Because this experience is time-based. What Robert Monroe called the TSI, time-space illusion. I get to choose whether or not and when I access that.
Is it the sheer act of relinquishing the choice, then, that is the euphoric thing for me?
Yes. And that is euphoric.
Because you have to choose to relinquish it, is the funny thing. So it's still a choice.
Yep.
It's kind of a paradox.
Let's stop there.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect place to stop. That's food for thought for anybody that fucking made it through this podcast. I loved this conversation.
God bless you.
That's a perfect place to stop.
No,
say that again. That's food for thought, because say it again.
Because I choose to relinquish choice, I believe was what I said.
I fucking love that. Camera. Thank you very much for watching the New World Order podcast. And just remember, we are watching you too.
Someone is watching. There are strangers